Today's section will be on polynomials. This is the fourth section of our review unit. Our essential question for this section is, what are polynomials and how do you add, subtract, and multiply them? So let's start by asking ourselves, how do we define polynomials? A polynomial is a single term or the sum of two or more terms containing variables with whole number exponents. For example, 7x squared could be considered a polynomial. Similarly, 8x cubed minus 9x squared plus 13x minus 6 is also a polynomial. Now, we said that 7x squared is a polynomial. We could be a little bit more specific about that and refer to it as monomial. So if there's a single term, we can refer to it as a monomial. If it has two terms, we can refer to it as a binomial. If it has three terms, we can refer to it as a trinomial, or simply anything greater than that we typically refer to strictly as a polynomial. So we can have specific types of polynomials depending on the number of terms we got, or we can in general refer to them as polynomials. Another term we need to understand is the degree of the polynomial. And this is the greatest degree of all the terms of the polynomial. So for our example of 4x squared plus 3x, the degree of this polynomial is 2. Now the general form of a polynomial in x might look like the following. Using the general form, the degree would be considered to be n. The leading coefficient is a sub n in this case. And finally, the constant term would be a sub 0. So the degree is n, the leading coefficient is a sub n, and the constant term is a sub 0. So now let's talk about adding and subtracting polynomials. Polynomials are added and subtracted by simply combining like terms. So for example, let's say we were trying to add these two polynomials, 5x squared minus 7x minus 8 plus 2x squared minus 3x plus 7. We would simply look for like terms. And notice we have an x squared term here and an x squared term here. So we could combine 5x squared and 2x squared and come up with 7x squared. Then we have just an x term, minus 7x and minus 3x. We would combine those two to get minus 10x. And then lastly, we would take the constant term, minus 8 on the left, plus 7 on the right, which would give us minus 1. And our final answer would be 7x squared minus 10x minus 1. Now what about multiplying polynomials? If you have the product of two monomials, that is simply obtained by using the properties of exponents, which we previously discussed in our review. But what if I have a binomial multiplied times a trinomial? For example, let's say we had 2x plus 3, a binomial, times a trinomial, x squared plus 4x plus 5. How would we go about doing that? Basically, we would multiply each term of the first polynomial by each term of the second polynomial and then combine like terms. And it would look something like this. We would initially take 2x here, and we would multiply it by the entire x squared plus 4x plus 5. Then we take the 3 and also multiply that times the 2x squared plus 4x plus 5. Now we would look to combine like terms. And just like we did before, we only have one x cubed term, okay, which is fine. And we only have one constant term, the 15. But we do have an 8x squared and a 3x squared, which combined would be 11x squared. And we also have a 10x and a 12x, which when combined would be 22x. So once we combine like terms, we would have our final answer. So our final result would be 2x cubed plus 11x squared plus 22x plus 15. So now let's look at the product of two binomials. This is sort of a special case of the product of polynomials. And as a result, we're able to use this method that is referred to as the FOIL method, where FOIL stands for first, outside, inside, last. It basically tells you what you have to multiply in order to take and get your final results, which terms multiply with which terms. So for example, let's assume that we have 3x plus 2 times 4x plus 5. So first, you would multiply the first terms. So you'd multiply the 3x times the 4x. Then you would multiply the outside terms, which would be the 3x and the 5. Then you'd multiply the inside terms, which would be the 2 and the 4x. And then finally, you'd multiply the last terms, which would be the 2 and the 5. And the result would look something like this. 3x times 4x for the first, 3x times 5 for the outside, 2 times 4x for the inside, and then 2 times 5 for the last. So we end up with 12x squared plus 15x plus 8x plus 10. Now, if you look closely, we have like terms. Specifically, we've got the 15x and the 8x. We combine these like terms, and our final result would be 12x squared plus 23x plus 10 for your final answer. So now multiply the following two binomials and post your answer in the drop box.